Okay, lots happening in the markets, of course, as we get a little bit closer to the 2025 growing season. Planning very well underway. One of the crops in Western Canada that I kind of find a little bit fascinating because I'm hearing a lot of different opinions from the audience in terms of growing about the same, growing a little bit more, or maybe even removing out of the rotation for profitability reasons, and that is, of course, canola. Here to talk about what's going on in the canola markets so that you can make a more informed decision for your farm for 25 based on what we know today. Lots changing. It is Ed Broshinski. He is market analyst with Cargill MarketSense. He's based out of Battleford, Saskatchewan. Hey, Ed, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, Sean. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good. We had a great time last week. We were at one of the MarketSense events in Camrose. We had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good turnout, and I mean, lots of questions, obviously, with everything that's going on. So,
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm I'm not a market analyst. I'm someone that's very interested in the current events of the day and trying to, trying to separate the noise and all that kind of stuff and for the audience. And things change. There's things that I said last week where there's new information where I would, sort of alter, provide maybe a little bit different thoughts just 1 week later. With so much noise happening in the markets right now, or news that could impact markets, how does that impact your job as an analyst?
well, I mean, it really comes down to having kind of a core plan. Like you start out the year, or I at least try, me and my team try to start out the year with a general roadmap, or we're calling it right now a blueprint
Yep.
for the foundational marketing plan. And you make that plan with a clear head, hoping that things change for the better, of course, but also always having some sort of risk management strategy in place for if they turn out worse. And then as new information comes in, you always assess that against the plan. Has anything changed, or is this just one more piece of information that just gets me a little bit further down the road on my plan? And having that core plan is absolutely important. Otherwise, you're not grounded. And every single tweet or different headline that comes out, you change the plan in response to that, and it makes marketing very hard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Whether it's you're an analyst or you're planning for your own farming operation.
Hmm.
Okay, canola. Um, I guess what are the variables that you're following right now when you're looking at the canola market as we're sitting here in the mid 600s for November?
Well, right now it to me looks like the market is in a bit of a Goldilocks kind of sentiment. Um, right now, as far as up until now, the market was very, especially speculators, managed money speculators, were very much of the opinion that, wow, Canada's biggest customer, United States, Canada's biggest seed importer, China, we're fighting trade battles with both of them. This looks like it could be bearish. What if there's something bad happens? It could be so bearish. The sentiment has flipped in the last few weeks to now, what if there is no issues with China? What if the U.S. tariff issue goes away? What are the risks there then? Well, the risks are to the upside. And so you've seen managed money speculators really sell a lot of canola in this kind of bearish environment up until now. And now they're considering, well, what if there is no issue? What if it's the Goldilocks scenario and everything's just right? Stocks could get pretty tight. And
Now,
that's what we're seeing now, that pivot.
yeah, now is so based on that
Mhm.
information, is this a time where you start to, shed some risk, sell into the rally, or are you a little bit tighter with your sales at this point because based on what you said, there could be a little bit more upside.
Yeah, I mean, right. So if you can imagine that, right now we've sold ahead of this. Back in November, we made some sales. Recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we lightened up a bit on one of the rallies. And so, as far as I'm concerned, if you're around that 70 to 80% sold on canola, you don't really need to do anything in response to these headlines and political volatility. But if you're below that, if you're 50% sold or 60% sold, I would definitely be using this as an opportunity to catch up because, quite frankly, we can't, in my opinion, take anything for granted.
Yeah.
Anything for granted. We're seeing prices between $14 and $15 a ton, or $14 and $15 a bushel. And if we're making money there, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So.
Yeah, and those sale percentages, those are based on old crop, not new crop, correct?
Pardon. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sorry. That's old crop, 70 to 80%. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about on new crop? And I know that the drought of 21 still has people a little bit people are a little bit I think a little bit slower with some of their sales because based on don't know
Mhm.
what I have. We're not even the snow's not even melted yet. What are you seeing out there in terms of new crop sales at this point?
Well, I mean, my opinion is a good spot to be right now is around 20% sold for new crop. And look, nowadays there's a lot of options that to take care of production risk. And so there's no need to say, yeah, I'm sold and if I don't produce it, I'm going to be in trouble. There's lots of ways to manage the
Hmm.
upside risk in case there's a drought. So,
Like, I was talking to a farmer yesterday, and we were talking about the potential for tariffs between Canada and the U.S. And on that initial list, both ways, canola would have been tariffed. So canola was kind of picked on by both countries. Um, I sort of described, somebody had asked me, "What do you think is going to happen?" And I said, "It's kind of like when you go to the roulette table and you're choosing red or black. Like it's kind of like a 50-50. Like who knows?" And you can pick one and you may be right, but you also could be very, very wrong. It's almost like it's so hard to understand that risk. Do you almost have to like sort of take it off the table, or how do you factor that in?
that's exactly what we've been wanting to do with our marketing plan this year is saying, wow, there's some major risks and they're all political. So we don't really have an edge into what's going on in the politician's head. Of course, Donald Trump, nobody's quite sure what he's going to do from day to day. So coming into this, our idea has been to just get to a position where we don't have to make any decisions. We're not forced to making any decisions in this environment. If we want to make a decision, if there's a profitable decision, if it's an opportunity, great. Let's be open to that. Use the options that we have. But as much as possible, we don't want to do anything, quite frankly, over the next call it 90 days.
Yeah. A common question I'm getting from the audience, so I'll ask you, is if RFK is confirmed, do we need to be worried about seed oils losing a lot of demand?
I don't know the extent, what kind of power, he would have to say ban certain food products. I mean, the U.S. Constitution is pretty strong with respect to individual and consumer freedom. So I think it would be hard to ban something, as ubiquitous as seed oils. And a lot of people really like them. I know that there's a lot of headlines to the contrary, but most people consume them on a daily basis. So they're pretty popular. So look, you go back, you know, a couple decades to the Atkins diet. These fads can have an impact on demand, these kind of trends.
Yeah.
But from a structural perspective, I think the demand for seed oils is here to stay.
The other one that I'm hearing a lot from the audience is about what is the future of biofuels?
Mm-hmm.
We obviously we had the Biden administration put in the IRA. We've talked a lot about on this program about 45Z and the opportunity potentially there. That's there's still a lot of unanswered questions on that one as well. But from your as a market analyst, and you look at this, what can we expect from on the biofuel side? Because there's been a lot of canola that's been shipped from Canada to the U.S. because of biofuels
Right.
as of late. So what's the breakdown there?
Well, as far as biofuels goes, it definitely looks like the new administration in the states is cool. Is kind of cooled its jets as far as the growth potential. There's definitely still legal mandates as far as blending volumes, and so those need to be satisfied some way or another. Whether or not there'll be growth of those mandates, that's the big question. And so that would be the risk as far as our business with the United States. But remember that there's a food element and a biofuel element. And if the legislation is brought in such that more soybean oil is forced domestic U.S. soybean oil is forced into the biofuel sector, they may need to import more canola oil for food, right, to offset that displacement. Finally, the U.S. biodiesel market is huge, but the European market's bigger. Brazil is rapidly increasing its biofuel consumption, as is in Indonesia, and that's the thing is that globally that trend is increasing, and it's not just about the environment. A lot of it's about energy security. And that's a different kind of motivator.
Yeah.
It's a more sustainable motivator towards biofuels than I think the some of the environmental causes are.
Yeah, that I was just going to follow up with that is that, a lot of times we talk about food security, but it's the energy security part of it, which is honestly south of the border in the US is talked about a lot more. It's a more
Mm-hmm.
part of the narrative than say it would be in Canada. Future of biofuel policy in Canada, and how is that different than what's going on in the US?
Well, so far right now, everything's on track. I mean, there's as for on track to growth for biofuel consumption in Canada. You've got the in Alberta, I want to say Strathcona, don't quote me, but there's an imperial oil facility going on that would consume, roughly 2 million tons of seed equivalent. That's huge, right? That would be a game changer here in Canada when that comes online. So, in Canada, things are on track. I don't know how things are going to develop politically. I don't even want to speculate on it, but today there's momentum behind it, right? And that's a good sign.
Yeah, as I look at before we wrap up here, as I look at the chart on say um, November canola for 25, it's we've twice kind of bounced off that 663, 664, and we're at 652. So
Mhm.
pay attention to that on the chart.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, just because we have a more optimistic outlook, kind of medium to long term, you still have the political threats in the nearby. You still have a seasonal trend that is against canola at this time of year, and until you get into the springtime, oftentimes through February and March, prices tend to slough off, just regardless of the political issues. And so, up here at these resistance levels, I think that we should be paying attention to that, how canola behaves. If it pushes through, great. But I would not want to, turn my nose up at some of these prices if I need to make sales as a
Okay,
farmer.
and bonus question: what
Yeah.
other what we talked about canola here the whole time? What other crop do we need to be paying attention to? Whether you think there's upside or downside?
Well, I think the last time we talked, I said corn was king, and it does feel like that's the boat that's lifting all, or that's the one that's lifting the rest of the market. I mean, and it's permeating almost every aspect of the market right now. And so, higher corn acres, for instance, may take away soybean acres in the United States, that sort of thing, and restrict the supply of oil seeds in that sense. So watch corn. If that thing breaks through $5, then that's good for everything.
Ed, really appreciate you joining us here today. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I got a couple more Cargill MarketSense events on my calendar, Brandon and Grand Prairie. Looking forward to it. I know we'll see you there. So all the best to you.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Sean.